Welcome to the Kernel of Truth, and I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, your host, and we have another great show for you today. And before I introduce my guest, I want to say a couple of things. We all know that the 2020 election was very important, and most of us watched that every minute that happened. And we know that the battleground states are very, very important. One of them is Wisconsin. Wisconsin played a critical role, and there were a lot of things that happened in Wisconsin that we all know were problems. And my next guest is one of the people who have the most insight as to exactly what happened in Wisconsin. And it's important for everybody listening to this show to know exactly what happened so that it doesn't happen again. And my special guest is Justice Michael Gableman. Let me tell you something about him. Okay, he was an assistant district attorney back in 1996, a district attorney in 1999, and he was elected to be a circuit court judge in 2002, and he was elected to the Wisconsin Supreme Court in 2008, a position he held for 10 years before being tapped to help in the Trump administration to be the senior advisor at the Office of Personnel Management, and then later a senior counsel. He also did an in-depth investigation of the 2020 election, which most people haven't even heard of. And so it is my honor to bring on to the show Justice Mike Gableman. Welcome to the show, sir.
Colonel, it's a great pleasure to be here. I thank you, and I thank your listeners for being interested in this important topic.
It is important, without question, and you'd be surprised, even here in Arkansas, people are attuned to what's going on, and they know about Wisconsin, but they don't know what you know, and that's why we want you on the show, because I think that, again, we're all about education here and letting people understand, again, the things that are not going to be printed in the newspaper. In fact, I think there was an article that just came out recently, right, in the Gateway Pundit. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, we're going to go and talk about everything you've done, but since that's relevant as of right now, I'd like for you to talk about it.
Well, I saw that, and I really have a lot of appreciation and respect for Jim Hoft and his brother Joe and everybody who works at Gateway Pundit. They're telling things that the mainstream media is simply covering up. The topic that I saw today on the Gateway Pundit had to do with the impeachment of a woman named Megan Wolf, who happens to be the current administrator of the Wisconsin Election Commission. She's been the administrator there for the last 4 years, and she was responsible for a lot of the very bad and illegal things that took place in Wisconsin during the course of the 2020 election season.
Uh-huh. Can you explain what the WEC, I guess it's called? What is that?
You know, the WEC stands for the Wisconsin Election Commission, and it was set up in 2016. It replaced the agency. The predecessor agency was called Government Accountability Board, and that was disbanded. That was disbanded by the legislature and the governor. Government Accountability Board was slanted so far left that they made up laws and started investigating the personal lives of political opponents. That was run by a man named Kevin Kennedy for about 30 years. Kevin Kennedy is the man who hired and trained Megan Wolf, and Megan Wolf is simply continuing on the Kevin Kennedy legacy of slanted and biased application of the laws.
So it's time for her to go, and I know that you've been pushing for the legislature to do something, and I want our audience to understand that you're somebody who actually understands exactly what happened. Before we get into the Megan Wolf and the current thing, can you talk to us about your investigation that you did and some of the findings that you had? I think that's important for a foundation here.
It is important, and it's also convenient that many of the findings of not only my report, I delivered in March of last year, I delivered a 136-page report to the Wisconsin legislature. I spoke to the legislature for 3.5 hours, answering questions and discussing the findings of my report. And I think it's very important, especially in light of some of President Trump's attorneys pleading guilty last week to some statements which now they look back and and they say they should not have made about corruption in the 2020 election. I think it's important for your viewers to know that not one word, not one paragraph of my 136-page report has ever been shown to be false. And that I wanted it to be able to stand up to the ages and to the scrutiny that it was going to get. And I believe my report, as well as the audit that was conducted by the Wisconsin Legislative Audit Bureau that showed all sorts of failings and defects of Megan Wolf and her administration of the Wisconsin Election Commission, none of which contradicted my own findings. And they all produced in the aggregate, they all resulted in 15 articles of impeachment being filed against Megan Wolf. And what's odd about this is right now the legislature has before it a resolution to impeach Megan Wolf, even though Megan Wolf's term is over. Her term was finished the last day of June 2023. And now she's sitting there as a so-called holdover appointment, which I ask people to consider if their term of employment had been done, and on their last day, they looked at their manager or their boss and said, I don't feel like going. You just keep paying me. She can do that, and she can only do it because she has the full protection of the traditional media. And I saw this, and I will, before I get right into the substance of what your question was driving at, I want to point out what we're facing. We are facing not only dishonesty, not only lies from the Milwaukee paper, from the Madison papers, from all of the traditional media outlets. We're actually fighting a brainwashing campaign. When I was getting ready for a speaking engagement last week on the Megan Wolf impeachment issue, I read about half a dozen news articles, from the AP to the Reuters to the Milwaukee and Madison papers, and they all use the same phrase. The exact same phrase. They said, this resolution calling for Megan Wolf's impeachment contains 15 allegations which have all been debunked. That's the phrase they use. They, so much for independent journalism. And none of the articles, I would have been very interested to see where or how they thought these allegations had been debunked. They haven't. Megan Wolf has never had to answer publicly. She gets all of the best parts of government power without any of the pesky, inconvenient parts of having to actually answer questions in public. I spoke at her confirmation hearing the first week in September, and the chairman of the committee in our state Senate, who was running it, pointed out, first, Megan Wolf was not present in this big hearing room. And second, that he had scheduled the hearing with Megan Wolf. So that was a day and time that she chose, but then she failed to show up. She won't answer. And I wouldn't want to have to answer questions if I were her either. I'd be afraid to answer questions in public. 15 articles of impeachment, any one of which serve as a good reason for her to be gone. But I really do have a top 4 list of things that if your viewers know about, any one of them would serve as the reason for them to know that Megan Wolf must be gone if there's going to be an honest and transparent election in Wisconsin in 2024.
Let's hear them. I want to hear the 4.
Well, let's start with the very fundamental fact that in Wisconsin, we've got a little over 5.5 million citizens, of which 4.5 million are eligible to vote. They've attained the age of 18. They're not serving a sentence for a felony. They have not been adjudicated incompetent by a court. They're eligible to vote. 4.5 million. Mm-hmm. So if I ask any of your viewers, what's the maximum number of people that we should have on our voter rolls in Wisconsin? If they're tracking along with me, they should be able to say, well, if you have 4.5 million eligible voters, there should be no more than 4.5 names on your voter roll. And that's why it comes as a surprise constantly to the citizens of this state and everywhere else that in Wisconsin, where we have about 4.5 million eligible voters, we have over 7 million names on the voter roll, including people that Megan Wolf, that the Wisconsin Election Commission, that everybody knows these people are dead. We have people on those voter rolls who we know have moved out of state, but yet they stay on the voter rolls. And that is, I think that alone takes away any confidence in the quality and honesty of our voter rolls. There are two reasons why this is very concerning. One is from a legal perspective, and the other is from a very practical, real perspective. The legal issue is that our state statutes divide voters into two categories. The language in the statutes is very clear. We've got two kinds of voters in Wisconsin. We've got eligible voters and we have ineligible voters. Eligible, ineligible. Megan Wolf has simply ignored the statutory language and replaced it with her own language. And she says voters should be divided into two categories: active voters and inactive voters. I suppose she would assign the names of the dead people that are on her voter roll into the inactive category, but I'm not confident of that, which leads me to the very practical concern. The practical concern of having about 3 million names on the voter rolls that we know are either dead or who have moved out of state or do not accurately reflect the identities of actual people, or who are repetitive, who list the same person several times, is that anyone with access to the voter roll system, the WISP vote system, which Megan Wolf, I had to listen to her many times in her highly filtered statements that have either been written by her lawyers or her scripted statements the few times years ago when she appeared in front of a committee at the Capitol, where she took credit for developing this in-house voter roll system and method and means of managing the voter rolls. Well, the downside for everybody else is that only she knows how these things are actually done. So anyone with access to her voter roll can go in and activate any kind of voter name that they want, say 2 weeks before an election.
Right.
And all of a sudden, whoever is activated, it's a bad actor. They're not going to follow the law. They simply want to manufacture fraudulent ballots. Mm-hmm. They go online, they activate as many of these so-called voters, non-existent voters, as they want. The ballots are then sent to wherever the person directing the activation of the voter tells them to be sent, tells the system to send the ballots. And then when whoever is on the receiving end of these ballots fills them out and sends them back, they're counted as if they were actually legitimate ballots. And a very problematic part of this, there is no way for anyone to track who's been activated and who's been deactivated, because there is an artificial barrier that Megan Wolf helped to design. She hides behind it. She says, well, it's a rule that they will charge you $12,500 a day for a day's worth for the current day of voter roll. Well, and unless the requester who comes with that $12,500 happens to to request it at the precise minute that reflects the active or inactive status of any of these non-existent 3 million people.
You'll never know. It sounds like a recipe for manipulation, and we're going to take a break. But I bet hold that thought, because I want to finish up, because you got 3 other things I want to hear about. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with our guest, attorney Justice Mike Gableman. This is Colonel Truth. I'm Conrad Reynolds. We'll be right back.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Christmas sale ever. You get our brand new 6-piece My Towels for only $29.98, or rejuvenate your bed with a My Pillow mattress topper as low as $99.99. Or how about My Pillow bed sheets for as low as $24.98? There's something for everyone. Duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more. Well, I know My Pillow products make for the perfect Christmas gifts, so I'm going to extend my money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2024. So go to MyPillow.com now or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get huge discounts on all My Pillow products. For example, you get our 6-piece towels for only $29.98. Or get your very own My Pillow bed sheets for as low as $24.98. It's our biggest Christmas sale ever. Get all your shopping done now while quantities last.
Welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with our special guest, Justice Mike Gableman out of Wisconsin. And he's explaining to us all the problems that we have in Wisconsin. Justice, we left off with, you had 4 key points you wanted to bring up. And now we were on the first one, and you were finishing up a little bit about the current system, about the voter rolls and the 3 million voters that are on there that can be shifted from inactive to active, and how that could be manipulated to be able to skew a vote. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. Not only can it be manipulated, the even worse is there is no way for anyone who wants to find out what actually happened. There's no way for anybody to ever go back and look, because the system that Megan Wolf many times has taken credit in these highly filtered public statements that she issues that are written, no doubt, by her lawyers and her PR people. She has taken credit any number of times for calling this WISVOTE system and the voter roll system that she designed a homegrown system.
Right.
So in other words, she and her staff made this up. And what's problematic about the system is, if Megan Wolf had set out to design a system to be less transparent, a system designed to hide the truth about what is actually going on with the extra 3 million names, to hide and disguise and make it so no one can ever account for which names are being activated and which names are being deactivated, who's activating and who's deactivating, when they're activating and when they're deactivating. She could not have designed a more perfect system to hide the actuality of what's going on with those additional 3 million names. That is not a system to inspire confidence. There's such a common sense solution to all of this that I proposed in my report and in my discussion, 3.5-hour appearance in front of the legislature. There's such a common sense, budget neutral, or even saving money system, which is simply to take away this $12,500 a day barrier. If you want to find out who's on the Wisconsin, what names are on the Wisconsin voter rolls, before you'll do that, you have to pay the Megan Wolf and her Wisconsin Election Commission. You have to pay WEC $12,500. Take that away. First of all, let's make our voter rolls honest. Let's make them accurate. No more dead people on our voter rolls. No more people who we know have moved out of state. Let us make it a policy in Wisconsin that we will actually follow the law, which says that it will be eligible voters only on our voter rolls. That would solve a lot of problems. Second, what would solve even more of this concern and this very, very well-grounded concern that fraudulent ballots are being sent out and collected, because right now it's behind this hidden wall that nobody but Megan Wolf and her employees have access to. Make it all public, free of charge. The taxpayers have already paid for it. Put it up online, and in real time, allow anybody who's interested to see what changes are being made to the voter rolls. And allow the public to see who's making the changes, who is doing it. Why do the leftist people like Megan Wolf and all the people who work at the Wisconsin Election Commission, why do they always scream, and all the media who is doing everything they can to protect Megan Wolf, why do they always scream about sunshine being the best disinfectant? In other words, a metaphor for the idea that if all the systems are opened up and made public so that everybody can see what's going on, that is the best way to remove contamination of fraud, for instance, from the system. Why is it they scream like bloody murder when their political opponents, when they suspect their political opponents are doing something? Nobody has given me a good faith reason why we cannot allow everybody who wants to see the names on the voter rolls and who's making the changes. The only pushback I got, which the media covered as if it was the biggest barrier to that in the world, which is to say that in Wisconsin, as in other states, there are certain voters who can go to court and they can ask a court for protection from public disclosure of their names on the voter rolls, because that might give an indication of where they live. Usually it's used in the domestic violence context, where someone has been the victim of domestic violence, and in order to protect themselves from subsequent attacks, they're granted anonymity. Well, of course, I would do nothing. I would suggest nothing to hinder the anonymity of a domestic violence victim or anybody else who a court has granted anonymity. Take them out of the equation. After that, Colonel, I have heard no reason at all why this shouldn't be done. And the beauty about this system is anyone who wanted to could go online and they could figure out themselves. If they wanted to take a piece of their district, for instance, or their precinct or their city or county, and if they wanted to do their own work to find out if the lists were legitimate, it would all be there for the public to see. That's how they used to do it, by the way, in the 1950s. The names in our state's biggest city, Milwaukee, would go up in your neighborhood. You would drive by, and there'd be billboards. There'd be billboards with the names of the eligible voters there, so people knew that they were on the voter rolls. But it also had the byproduct of anybody who was walking by that billboard could see who's registered to vote and who's not. And the final thing that's budget neutral, and all of these three things in combination would remove, I believe, about 80 to 90% of the room for fraud. Right now, if you want the list of the names and addresses of everybody who voted in a recent election, well, first you have to pay the Wisconsin Election Commission $10,500 to get that. So $12,500 to get 1 day, 1 minute of 1 day's worth of the list of the names who are on the voter rolls, and then $10,500 for the list of the people who voted. Obviously, you put that list of the people who voted up on the internet and you make it available for anyone who wants to see it. Those lists have already been paid for. The taxpayers have paid the salaries of Megan Wolf and all of her employees to gather and collect and put that data in a readable form. It's there. There is no reason for this. And there is no good faith reason for this hiddenness. Well, even if everything is perfectly legitimate, let us give her the benefit of the doubt and say that this system that she's running and she's hiding and she's putting behind all these barriers and that she's not allowing anyone to take a look at. Let's say that they are running perfectly honestly. That could be. The fact that nobody else can know that in order to believe that, we simply have to take her word for it. We simply have to take Megan Wolf. That is the opposite of inspiring confidence. That is almost purposely sowing doubt and seeding suspicion. And there's no good reason for that, especially when with 3 simple budget neutral or budget saving moves, all of that doubt could be eliminated.
We have, Justice, we have the same thing here in Arkansas. It's a little different, but there's a common theme here, and that is just trust us. And we're going to be working behind the curtain. It's going to be opaque, but don't worry about it. We're all good people, and you should trust us no matter what. We see that over and over again. We're going to come back, and I do want to talk about the other 3 points that you talked about. We'll be back in just a minute. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with the Kernel of Truth. We'll be right back in just a minute. Thank you.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Christmas sale ever. You get our brand new 6-piece My Towels for only $29.98, or rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper as low as $99.99. Or how about MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $24.98? There's something for everyone. Duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more. Well, I know MyPillow products make for the perfect Christmas gifts, so I'm going to extend my money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2024. So go to MyPillow.com now or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get huge discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you get our 6-piece towels for only $29.98. Or get your very own MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $24.98. It's our biggest Christmas sale ever. Get all your shopping done now while quantities last.
Welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds. I'm here again with our special guest, Justice Mike Gableman. And he's going to talk about, aren't you, Justice, about the Zuckerbucks there in Wisconsin. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. The second reason why Megan Wolf must go, all of these reasons in isolation would be enough. And by the way, her term is over. She's sitting there. She is not appointed. And when the Senate considered her confirmation in the first week of September, a supermajority refused to confirm her. So she's sitting out there, and the only reason she can stay is because she has the protection of the leftist media. The reason why, one of the big reasons why the non-existent 3 million names, the 3 million names of non-existent people on our voter rolls is so significant, especially when considered in combination with the fact that it is absolutely hidden and no one ever can ever find out who is activating the names and making these names eligible to send in a ballot. No matter who actually fills out the ballot and returns them, they look legitimate. Wisconsin was one of the states that got part of the $500 million with a B, $500 million that Mark Zuckerberg spent on the 2020 election. Now, he said, Zuckerberg, by the way, who already, before he spent this money, while Donald Trump was president, Zuckerberg made some comments indicating that he was disgusted by Donald Trump, something along those lines, where he clearly indicated a hostility to Donald Trump. So consequently, I think there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't take him at his word that he merely wanted to give this, depending on who you're talking to, $400 million, $500 million. I think the math adds up to about $450 million for administration of public elections. So think about that Mark Zuckerberg, who has already declared his hostility to Donald Trump, is sending money and employees to actually work in the clerk's offices of Wisconsin's 5 largest cities. So of the money that Zuckerberg distributed, 5 cities in Wisconsin received $10 million. you see in most states, they have a Secretary of State who is in charge of running elections. We don't have that in this state. And even though Megan Wolf and Wisconsin Election Commission claim to be the ultimate authority on Wisconsin elections, if you follow the law, which is a big if with these people, if you follow the law, it's the local clerks, the 1,852 municipal clerks in our state who are actually lawfully responsible for running the elections. So Mark Zuckerberg says that he's going to spend this money. Remember, COVID was going on.
Right.
And he said he was going to spend the money to protect citizens from COVID, even though nobody asked for this money. And no clerk in our state had said that they're unable to effectively run elections or effectively protect people from COVID. And by the way, and the only figure that's out there shows that less than 1% of all of this money actually went to COVID protection items. And to the best of my knowledge, no doctor, no physicians, no COVID scientists were hired with this money to figure out best practices. The COVID, I think it's very fair to say that the idea that Zuckerberg was spending this money to protect American citizens from COVID is simply untrue. The evidence simply doesn't back that.
Right.
So why did they do it? It goes hand in glove with the fact that when Zuckerberg was looking for the person that he needed to administer this, let's say, nationwide COVID relief program that nobody asked for and nobody needed, he didn't go to the scientists, he didn't go to the physicians of the world. He went to a man named David Plouffe, P-L-O-U-F-F-E, David Plouffe, who, along with David Axelrod, was one of Barack Obama's two principal political campaign managers who were with him from Barack Obama, community activist, to Barack Obama, President of the United States. So David Plouffe became the principal advisor for Mark Zuckerberg as to how to distribute all of this money that was going to go into administering public elections. Now, the whole concept is simply bizarre. I wonder how the left would have reacted if, say, David Koch or any member of the Koch family or any other prominent, wealthy Republican contributor had said, you know what, we're going to take over administration of elections in the biggest urban areas of our country, and don't worry about it. We'll have access to all the voter rolls and all the voter information, but we'll do it honest. Trust us. I wonder what the left in the papers would be saying about it if the shoe was on the other foot. I doubt it would be this kind of defense of the system. So David Plouffe, who's hired by Mark Zuckerberg to tell Zuckerberg to where to distribute this money, in the summer of 2019, Plouffe wrote a book very subtly titled Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump. Plouffe hates Trump. And in summer of 2019, Plouffe was writing a book describing step by step for whoever the Democrat nominee was going to be as to the path, the political, realistic reality things that had to be done in order for the Democrat candidate to beat Donald Trump. So that's who Mark Zuckerberg hires to be his principal advisor on the distribution of all of this money. And in his book, Citizen's Guide to Beating Donald Trump, David Plouffe wrote that the 2020 election was likely to come down to block by block, street by street political warfare in cities such as Detroit, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. If we look to Detroit, where they do have a Secretary of State who's in charge of administering elections, so they only have to worry about persuading one person there to do it their way, to do it David Plouffe and Mark Zuckerberg's way. And in Michigan, the Secretary of State there received a total of about $25 million, half from Zuckerberg and Plouffe, half of which went to her own personal 501c3 organization or 501c4, I don't remember, her own political action committee. and half of it went to the Secretary of State. Not in her personal capacity, but in her official capacity.
Well, I want you listen. We got to go to a break, but I want you to hold on to that thought because that's important. The money went to her personal 501c3 or 4, whatever it is. I want to talk about that in just a minute. We'll be right back with Justice Mike Gableman. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with Colonel of Truth. We'll be right back.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest Christmas sale ever. You get our brand new 6-piece My Towels for only $29.98, or rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper as low as $99.99. Or how about MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $24.98? There's something for everyone. Duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more. Well, I know MyPillow products make for the perfect Christmas gifts, so I'm going to extend my money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2024. So go to MyPillow.com now or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get huge discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you get our 6-piece towels for only $29.98. Or get your very own MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $24.98. It's our biggest Christmas sale ever. Get all your shopping done now while quantities last.
I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds. Welcome back to the Colonel of Truth. Back with our special guest, Justice Mike Gableman out of Wisconsin. And he was telling us some of the reasons that Megan Wolf, who is their election WEC commissioner, needs to go. But Justice, I have one thing, and then I want you to finish up with what your thought was earlier. But why is it that someone who's not being paid, whose term is expired, can act like they still are in that position? Where's the sheriff? Can't they remove her? I don't understand that.
She is being paid. She's filed a lawsuit against the leader, the Speaker of the House, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Senate, and she is claiming holdover appointment status. And our Senate and Assembly leaders have capitulated to that for whatever reason. And so she's sitting there. Her term is over. The Senate wouldn't confirm her, but she's still there running things, collecting a paycheck. Why? The answer is, I think, because we live in insane times, Colonel.
Unbelievable. Well, all right. Well, now we got the answer to that. Basically, we don't have people with a backbone to stand up and say, you're gone, and get the sheriff to go down and remove her. That's what needs to happen.
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear is the endemic here. Fear is the reason for all of this. The political so-called leaders are afraid of media criticism. They don't have the confidence just to do the right thing and trust that the people will see that. They don't have that confidence. They have fear of losing their jobs. The reporters, even these reporters who keep repeating what each other say, they're not free. They're not free to say the truth, even if they wanted to, because they would be probably fired by their publisher, or at a minimum, they'd be shunned by the rest of the reporting community. And that makes a workplace very difficult if everybody else is shunning you. So this whole thing rests on the rotten and rickety structure of fear. And if you have the courage to say the emperor has no clothes, then all of these fearful small people who are interested only in their own self-preservation in their job will circle the wagons and they will attack you. So let's talk about what Mark Zuckerberg got for his $500 million. What he got was his agents and employees in Wisconsin actually physically and literally running the elections. We had a guy named Michael Spitzer Rubenstein of Brooklyn, New York, whose only contact with was, by the way, let's talk about the Center for Tech and Civic Life, which is run out of downtown Chicago, out of the former Barack Obama campaign headquarters, which is convenient because the lady who runs it, Tiana Epps Johnson, had just graduated from the Barack Obama Fellowship Program. And she didn't have to move very far because all of a sudden David Plouffe comes to her with $500 million when the whole budget for CTCL, a private corporation, by the way, had been about $1 million a year, and all of a sudden they've inflated it. So what they do is they come to town, they sign contracts with our state's 5 largest cities, and they require the 5 largest cities in the state to run the election the way that CTCL, fueled and funded by David Plouffe and Mark Zuckerberg's money, tells them to run it. They call them grants. They're not grants. They were employment contracts. And these contracts, Wisconsin's 5 largest cities became the employees of Mark Zuckerberg and David Plouffe, not the other way around. So what that bought for Mark Zuckerberg and David Plouffe is they were able to handpick people from New York and Chicago to come into Wisconsin and take over the administration of Wisconsin's elections in those 5 largest cities. And probably the most key factor for our conversation today is those people were given direct access to the WisVote system. So they were able to go in and activate and deactivate voters under the computer system that I described at the first segment,
right,
where there's no accountability. Now, I got a little bit of pushback in an unsigned memorandum from Wisconsin Election Committee saying that I was all wrong because there are computer keys and there are passwords. It's common knowledge that people share passwords, especially if they're working for a common cause and they're all doing the same thing. They're going to share these keys. They're going to share the passwords. There's no way to go back and track. They can talk as loudly as they want to, but they have yet to show any reason for me to believe that these passcodes and entry methods were not being shared by the Zuckerberg employees. And what they were doing, Colonel, remember, David Plouffe said block by block, street by street political warfare in cities such as Detroit, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. And what he didn't have to say is they were hunting down Biden profile voters, which is a euphemism, and it's their euphemism for African-American voters. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is that all the research says that when African-American people vote, they tend to vote about 89% of the time for Democrats. However, that same research shows that African-American voters are far less likely to show up to the polls on election days. So the whole game here, what Zuckerberg bought for all of his money was a built-in apparatus using all of the power and authority of the state and other states and of the 5 largest cities in Wisconsin, so that when a Zuckerberg agent or employee saw that an African-American person had requested an absentee ballot but had not yet returned it, one of the Zuckerberg paid what they didn't call them ballot harvesters, they called them ballot navigators. They would go out to the citizen's home, knock on the door, and say, "Hello, Mrs. Smith, I'm here from the city," right away, setting up this aura of authority, which is going to get any of our attention if someone knocked on the door and said, "I'm here from the city." And we see that you requested an absentee ballot, but you haven't returned it. Do you need any help with that? And once we finish filling it out, I can take it to the clerk's office for you. Isn't that great? That's what they were using their access for.
Got it.
The other 2 reasons why she has to go is Megan Wolf is knowingly and purposely allowing military absentee ballots to be used for fraud and to cancel out the legitimate votes of our military service people. This came to light 10 days before the most recent election in last November, when one of the workers at the city of Milwaukee sent 3 fraudulent, fictitious military absentee ballots with made-up names and with made-up home addresses, but sent them all to one particular home, which happened to belong to the chairman of our Wisconsin Assembly Campaigns and Elections Committee. And the reason that this worker gave to police and to the public for her conduct was she was tired of hearing all these fanciful theories of how fraud was being conducted in the state. And she wanted to point out and she knew that the chairman would bring it to public light. She wanted to point out what she labeled the true avenue of fraud, which is the theft of military absentee ballots. Now, I argued, my employer at the time brought a lawsuit, and I argued in front of a judge for about 3 hours that Megan Wolf was purposely derelict in her duty to create the system that would allow clerks to know whether these ballots purporting to be from military absentee voters were legitimate or not. And she was knowingly failing to do that. And Megan Wolf, again, just as she didn't have the guts to show up at her own confirmation hearing, which she scheduled with the chairman of the committee, which, by the way, if I was under that kind of scrutiny and people were attacking me, wild horses couldn't have kept me from my confirmation hearing, because I would have been proud to tell people what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I would have been an adult human being and responsible public servant, and I would have taken the responsibility for my faults, and I would have promised to remedy them. That's not how Megan Wolf is built. And another testament to that is when we called this defect to her attention, she didn't issue a public statement apologizing for the defect and promising to remedy it. What did she do? She did what a lot of criminal defendants do. She lawyered up, and she called in the Mark Elias Law Group. Colonel, you might have heard of that. Your viewers might have heard of the Hillary Clinton law firm, the same one that she laundered the money in to go buy the false report on the so-called Russia thing with Donald Trump. That's the Mark Elias law firm. So when Megan Wolf, I'm arguing it's just me. She's got 7 lawyers with her. She's got several from the Mark Elias Law Group. She's got several from this Law Forward, which is a far leftist group, which is the water carrier for the, I can't remember the character's name, but he's an odd guy who used to be a Republican and now he's a Democrat. And he started Project 65 to sue all the different lawyers who have done anything to which possibly could have helped Donald Trump. So I guess if having honest elections could be said to help Donald Trump, then I guess I'm guilty. And I guess that's why this project, the same Law Forward and Project 65 has come after me and filed 2 complaints. I just testified for 2 days in Los Angeles on behalf of John Eastman, where they're also trying to go after him. But he was, so when I was talking about all of these things in a Los Angeles courtroom, during a break, I testified for 2 days. And during a break at the first day, when I'm talking about the Zuckerberg money, when I'm talking about the Zuckerberg and David Plouffe and all of their employees coming in, my lawyer there, John Eastman's lawyer, called for a break. And we walked out into the hallway, and he said, you got to talk slower, Justice. You got to talk slower. I said, what do you mean? And he said, this is the first time this judge or anybody else in California is hearing. This is the first time they've ever heard about Mark Zuckerberg and David Plouffe running elections anywhere or participating. And that is very, very much a purposeful effort on the part of the traditional media to cover it up. And then,
hey, Justice, I gotta butt in because we're running out of time. But you got so much more to say. I still want to get into what's currently going on with getting rid of Megan Wolf. I mean, we've established
that very much.
Yeah, you've established the foundation of why she needs to go. There's no question about that. The question is, what are you doing? And I want to hear more about the John Eastman. So, would you be willing to come back next week and finish up?
Happy to.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you so much. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with the Colonel of Truth. We'll be back next week with Justice Mike Gableman on part 2 of this interview. Thank you so much. Give this a video a thumbs up, if you will. Like and subscribe to our channel. Very important for us to spread this message to everybody, and I can't do it without your help. This is the Colonel of Truth, and I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, and thank you for joining us.